Good evening, everybody. And if you're just tuning in, I hope you have found the Angel Rock. Short notice here. I found out this weekend that we have a scheduling change. So from now on, this happens from time to time. We get new hosts on the network. I hope you were tuned in to the show before me, Trisha Moe. She's got a new show on the network of her own, and it sounds like it's going to be a great show. So be sure to check that out. They started a little late. That's why I'm a little late. Guys, I have to tell you, and this is not Kevin Annett's fault, and this is the problem when you can only get a hold of somebody by emails. He didn't get my emails. I don't even know if he's gotten the one that I sent him again before the show for the link. But you know what? I decided let's just do a show with just me. I haven't done that in a long time. So first of all, welcome to the Angel Rock. You were listening to this show on out of New Orleans, Louisiana. If you've never been here before, welcome. We have a lot of regular people that watch the show and join us. I'm going to let you know. I put it on the memo. We're not on UFO Paranormal Radio Network's UFO YouTube channel because, or you can even find it if you look up UPRN, because that's the name of our station, United Public Radio Network. I want to give a huge shout out to Joe Montaldo, who used to produce us. We now produce ourselves. He is the owner of the network and has many great shows on our network. My show, if you've never been here before, covers all aspects of the paranormal or supernatural. I say, hey, Dave. So, I cover anything from UFOs to aliens to the real paranormal. I've lived in an extremely haunted house. We've shared our story actually on international TV, Paranormal Survivor, season 4, episode 9, called Demonic Hauntings. So I'm very knowledgeable in that. I should introduce myself. I'm Lorilei Potvin, your host. I am a Canadian psychic medium. I'm also a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner. I'm a spiritual teacher and mentor. I am a truth seeker, and I'm a registered nurse. Now, tonight, we were supposed to have the amazing, incredible Kevin Annett. He may get the link. I don't know. He may pop in. If he does, I'll add him in a second. And again, as I was starting the show, that's why we're also not on our main YouTube channel, which is UFO Paranormal Network on YouTube, because we're going to be talking about sensitive topics. And Kevin has quite the story. So if he's not able to be here tonight, I will get a hold of him, and I'll either have him next week or we'll juggle some things. I will have him on because he's got a lot of important information to share. Nonetheless, we're going to talk about what's going on in the world here. So I figured let's stick with, you know what, I'm streaming on my YouTube channel. You can find me on my Facebook profile, on UPRN's Facebook profile, Joe Montaldo, UFO Undercover. I think we're on iCar for Facebook tonight as well. We are on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network Twitter channel, where you can now watch videos, longer videos than just a few seconds. We're streaming there, and we are streaming to the UFO Paranormal Radio Network channel on Twitch. So I hope you guys can watch this. Now, I am sure that you guys have seen, like I said, we're just going to carry on and cross our fingers that Kevin got my link and that maybe he'll pop in here. If not, like I said, I promise I will have him back on. But I got a lot of things to talk about. First of all, I'm sure, unless you're hiding under a rock, you have probably heard about what's going on in Canada. It has given us all great, great faith. There's been a lot of misinformation out there. I am getting the information sent to me non-stop, which I super appreciate. I connect with many different podcasters from around the world. I'm in quite a few information chat groups with people from around the world. I work with many psychic, intuitive, very gifted people that we get a lot of information from spirit from. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot changing. There's a lot shifting. So I thought, you know what, we'll start out with what's going on in Canada, because the beautiful thing about it is where I live in Canada, I am in a city called Thunder Bay. It's in northwestern Ontario, Canada. We are smack dab in the middle of Canada. We are about 35 to 40 minutes away from the Minnesota border, about 6 hours north of Minneapolis, Minnesota. But the interesting thing about my city is because we are right on the shores of Lake Superior, which is one of the Great Lakes, you have to come through my city. If you're coming from the west to the east of Canada, if you're coming from the east going to the west, you do same thing. And if you're coming from anywhere in Canada, unless you're going to go through the States and around the lakes, you have to come through my city, like say to go to Toronto or anything like that. So we had the truckers here, and it was a beautiful thing. I had all intentions actually of going to support them, and I've never done this. I actually forgot I was on a podcast. I got a message and they said, um, we're waiting for you. And I went, oh my God, I forgot. I've never gotten ready so quick in my life. Full makeup in 3 minutes and online. I was in my pajamas. I don't know how I did it. Anyways, so that, like I said, I'm doing a lot of podcasts. I will be on another podcast out of South Korea Friday night for a couple of hours with Jeffy Ryder. I will be doing another podcast. I don't have the time yet, out of Australia with a very, very good friend of mine who connected me with Kevin and Annett. I want to give her a huge shout out. She's a close friend of mine, Karen Holton. We are both going to be working with Jimothy Masters. We all work together on the International Tribunal for Conscience and Common Law, and he's had us on his podcast before. And I'm also actually in a chat group on Messenger. I'm the only Canadian in there. And I'd say 99.9% of the people there are in Australia. So I've been getting tons of messages. What's going on? What's going on? We're not hearing anything. So, as I understand it, I don't know if any of you follow the real Pat King is his name. Apparently, he did something like this about 3.5, 4 years ago. Nothing of this magnitude or size, nor did it get the media attention. But he is Métis, and for those who may not understand what Métis is, and we will be talking about some of that stuff with Kevin and Annett when he is on. You are First Nations and another nationality. So the Dell, who has a show here on Thursday nights called The Delicious Recipe, where he covers truth-seeking and, I hate the word, conspiracy theory. And he also does some aspects of the paranormal. He is Métis. And some of the stuff I was hoping to talk to Kevin about, so we will with the next show. His grandmother, who I knew, I've actually known the Dell my whole life. We have the same aunt and uncle through marriage. So, no, we're not related by blood, but I know his whole family. His grandmother was Cree Indian and lived up in Alberta, which is more in the western part of Canada. And she was one of the children that was taken from her family and forced to go to a residential school. She was actually adopted into a Caucasian family. She never, as I understand it, saw her Cree family again. Very, very bright woman. She spoke 5 languages and really, really sweet lady. She's no longer with us. So she passed away many years ago. So that's some of the stuff Kevin is going to talk about. You may have seen, I know I've shared it out with many people. I know you got it, Dave. It said, I think it said something about breaking news, and it had Kevin on there. And the interesting thing that I didn't know about, but I do now, is he has convened many, many tribunals or courts of law, if you will, that go under the auspices of common law. Now, common law existed long before the things we now operate under, which is basically maritime law, depending on where you live. Common law still exists all around the world. It was kind of a, if you will, and anybody that's in the audience, feel free to correct me, but from the research I've done, it kind of was pretty well the same. Like, I think they adapted a few bits and pieces depending on where you live geographically. But the problem is, I have found, at least we found with the tribunal we were on, is enforcing common law. Finding a judge that is actually a true judge that is not tainted and is able to adjudicate or preside over a trial, if you will. Well, Kevin Annett actually has really, really, really fought for the First Nations people here. Some of the stuff I was going to talk about, we will get into the trucker stuff. And if you have any questions or anything you're wondering about, please let me know. I got a little bit off about Pat King. I will get back to him. So anyways, he actually has been working on behalf of the First Nations people for a long time. He has been smeared in the media. He's been blacklisted. He actually was responsible by holding a common law tribunal in court, if you will. and coming out with a judgment that the previous pope that we had was charged with horrific crimes against children, torture and murder of children. And I believe it was Spain that was going to enforce it. Because I don't know if you guys remember the Pope before the one we have now just sort of quietly disappeared, that he resigned. That is why. I do not believe he saw any jail time. Kevin has been instrumental in bringing forth a lot of the travesties, tragedies, horrific events that have come, that have been hidden from Canadian history, hidden from the world. For example, and I just listened to Karen's podcast, Karen Holton. She actually had Kevin on, and some of the stuff that he revealed, I didn't even know. I did not know that First Nations people are not considered Canadian citizens. Um, they are considered wards of the basically the Queen. Um, Also, when he went through this, when he talked on Karen's show, that's why I really want to have him on here. We're going to get to the bottom of a lot of this, but that many of the children that were in the residential schools, I think he said there was 50% murder rate with these children. The other thing that I have been very well aware of that most people have not is that Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were in Canada in 1964. I believe it was October 10th, and they were visiting one of the First Nations communities in British Columbia. They took, and notice the numerological significance, October 10th, 1964, all 10, 10, 10. They took 10 First Nations children on a picnic. I do know, as the story goes, this didn't come from Kevin, this part, but Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip returned hours later, no children in tow, no questions asked. Nobody knew what happened to these children, and their bodies were discovered years later. I knew also that they returned to Canada after that point because my city was actually two cities before around 1970. The north side of the city was called Port Arthur, and the south side of the city was called Fort William. And we amalgamated and became Thunder Bay. We also, so the Queen and Prince Philip came through here in 1973. So after what they had done to these First Nations children and it had been discovered, they still came back for a cross-Canada tour, and they stopped here to celebrate the amalgamation of my city. I was a small child at that time. And I remember this because I was there. I wasn't up front, but there was an audible gasp that went all across the whole crowd that was there. I'm sure everybody in my city was there at this time. We had a mayor by the name of Walter Asif. Very appropriate name for what I'm about to share with you. Mr. Asif is no longer with us, but he did not do his homework about who was who when Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip arrived. As I understand it, when they stepped off their plane, he shook Prince Philip's hand and said, "I'm so happy to see you here, Your Majesty. Oh, I see you brought your wife." So first of all, he didn't realize, obviously, that who was who. And then while he was welcoming them at the front of our city hall, he smacked the Queen across her backside and made international news. It was an incident. Now, anytime I share this story, I've never shared it on this network, but I've shared it privately with people I know. They don't believe me. And when they look it up, and you can still find this, I haven't looked it up in about a couple of years, but you can still find this if you look it up. 1973, Mayor Walter Asif, if you want to look up international incident or what happened with Queen Elizabeth, you will find that online. That was quite the story. So they have returned to Canada since this and not faced any repercussions. There was quite the to-do made, I believe it was last year, about a mass grave that was discovered with over, I believe, 250 bones, the bones of 250 First Nations children. And it was not the first mass grave. And some of the stuff that Kevin has uncovered is the amount of that the churches are involved in this. The United Church, he was a minister or pastor for them, and he had gone to for training for this, not seminary, college. I was raised Catholic, so please forgive me. I can't remember the exact name of what they went, but it was theology studies, I believe. He went to college for that. Anyways, because when he started to stand up for these things, he basically lost his job. He was fired. He lost his family, his wife, and his children through a divorce that was funded by the church. And I've heard him speak about this on other podcasts. Um, he's been blacklisted ever since. He's never been charged with anything. He's never been given any reason for the firing to this day. So this man, when you hear about some of the things that he has done, but what I was really interesting when I listened to Karen's podcast, and Dave, I'm sure you can agree if you're still here, is that he was able to pinpoint what we are going through right now over the last 2 years, that this was first tried on the First Nations people and many years ago. I know Karen also got into the discussion about after World War II and actually how many SS Nazi scientists, doctors, and what have you. In Canada, we took the biggest amount of those people here. And many of them, he actually recounted a few of the personal stories of people that were able to identify by the SS tattoo on their hand. They suffered as children some of these tortures and what happened. They were a big part of the MK Ultra program. If you're not sure what that is, I invite you to look it up. You don't have to trust anything I'm saying here. You can take a look yourself. The only thing I always say is use different search engines. You'll be quite surprised by the difference that you find in some, especially the number one that's out there versus some of the lesser known ones. Before I forget, you guys, I don't know how I forgot this. We have now on UFO Paranormal Radio or YouTube channel, we are able to accept super chats. We've just been remonetized. We had a monetized channel. We lost it. I know Joe Montaldo is still fighting for loss of content and what have you. And I know he will update us the minute that things are settled, whatever way they're going to go. And Joe's not taking no for an answer, which is a good thing. So, with that being said, we have a membership site with this. Now, this is something for those of you, you've got your favorite places where you go. We've got content, something for everybody, whether it's our live hosts like myself or Trisha before me. We had the Syracuses on tonight with the Horsefly Chronicles. I mentioned Adele. We've got Michael Angley. Of course, we've got Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano 2 nights a week on Wednesdays and Thursdays. There's many great hosts on the network. And then, like I said, we've got a lot of syndicated hosts as well. So, again, repeating, there's something for everybody. But the beautiful thing about going behind the paywall, and it's not an astronomical fee, but a lot of the content that can't be shown on a regular channel, because we don't need any strikes on that, we will be able to upload it behind there, and you will get exclusive content there, as well as many of us as the hosts, and we were trying to do that with the last channel, but we are making exclusive content for people that support our channel financially by buying a membership monthly and supporting the channel. And it's a great thing. And you know what? You get one-to-ones with a lot of the different hosts. Zach's not here tonight, but Zach was a supporter of Zach Powers was a supporter when we had the monetized channel before. Almost all of us hosts knew him. All of us know Dave. But he really, really supported us financially with that network. And we're hoping that you guys will too, because when we have your financial support, we're able to bring better and better content to you guys. We're able to give even a further reach. We're already broadcasting to all 200 plus countries and all over the world, which is amazing. But, we just get to get bigger and better things for you guys out there. Plus, you guys get the bonus of getting special content that, again, it's not that we want to hide any content. There's just certain topics that we can't talk about on certain platforms that will be behind that paywall. So please consider supporting us. We would really, really appreciate it. And I know you will be the one that'll be the winner because of the things that you will find out, you will know about. Like I said, it's nothing but benefit for you, and it helps us out too. So everybody wins. And if you're not sure how to do that, you just have to go to the UFO Paranormal Radio Network channel on YouTube. There'll be a sign up button, and you can find out more information. You can always get a hold of one of us. We can always get a hold of Joe too if you've got any specific questions, and you can get a hold of him, and he can answer those for you. And But like I said, it's pretty easy and pretty self-explanatory. Anyways, back to what I was talking about. So I was talking about Queen Elizabeth and all this other stuff, but I was also mentioning Pat King. Now, Pat King did a convoy, as I understand, arranged it on a very minute scale compared to what's going on here. And this was about 3.5, 4 years ago, because Pat actually, that's what got me on the Métis string with this. He is Métis as well. There's been a lot of smear and misinformation going out about Pat as well. So he actually did this, and they were successful with stopping what was happening with some of the pipeline stuff that was going through Alberta onto First Nations land, and it worked. So these guys decided to do this again. And I watched, if you go over to Twitter, I'm trying to think what channel it was on. I think Kean Bexty. So it's Keene, B as in Bob, E, X, T as in Tom, E. He used to be with Rebel News, really one of our only independent news channels that's fairly large and has a global reach. And I would say practically all the time, you can pretty well get straightforward the truth. They even have a reporter that's over in Australia. So they've also had reporters in other parts of the world too. So they report on what's going on over there that you won't hear, say, on your mainstream channels in the news. So he used to be with them and he's branched out on his own. Very friendly and amicable. Yeah, I think there was just stories he wanted to cover that were a little easier for him to do individually on his own versus with a network. Anyways, the reason I mention him is I know he was streaming this off of YouTube today. The heads of the convoy in Canada who started it did a question Q&A, and it was only with independent podcasters and with independent news places like Kean Bexty and Rebel and what have you. So they answered a lot of questions. They cleared up a lot of misinformation that's out there. You know, there's been rumors that what I don't want to say the name out loud here, so I'll spell it Antifa was there. As I understand it, they reported that it was very peaceful. I believe in our mainstream media because they couldn't ignore it. They said there was a few thousand people there. Well, I think the final total on Saturday and Sunday, I believe, was close to 2 million people. I also got a message from a friend of mine that lives now in Mexico that was originally in California. We're not super close, but we're friends. Sending me a message. I didn't even know there are still truckers coming through my city. They were here. And they had posted to thank for the hospitality when they came through. I believe they were met with pallets of windshield washer fluid, and you need that right now with the snow and the salt up here in Canada. They were met with food, a barbecue. Want to remind you that there's Adopt a Trucker too that you can go to. I believe it's adoptatrucker.com. Anybody that's listening to this that's in the Ottawa area, or you've got a convoy coming through that may need a place to stay, or you might be able to help out, say with some food or anything like that. That's a beautiful thing. Apparently, the information they had been giving out or been told through the mainstream media, yeah, great job, truckers, was their GoFundMe was being frozen. And I do believe it was because I saw an independent news report when they were here in Thunder Bay last Wednesday. And I know that Chris Barber, one of the organizers, he had encouraged people to ask for their money back from GoFundMe. Well, I believe they have a lawyer running this part of the financial stuff as well as an accountant. So I guess they must have provided enough information for GoFundMe so they're allowed to access the money. They wanted to clear that up today. And that funding is almost up to $10 million, by the way. So thank you, world and Canadians and everybody who has supported them. The other thing that this has spurred, which is a beautiful thing, you guys have heard me say this on my show so many times. Let's put our differences aside and unite as one. That's what needs to happen. And that's exactly what's happening. I want to give a shout out to all our U.S. brothers and sisters that are coming up to support Canada, support what these guys are going through. And these guys aren't going anywhere. Like in the press conference, they were joking that summer will be upon us in no time. And then that's when the dance parties and everything will really start. But they also remind people that most of these big rig truckers, because they're on the road for so long, that they're fairly self-sufficient for months on end by themselves. So they're not leaving. They're not leaving at all. I have seen some video. I don't know what it's for. I do know it's in Canada. Looks like some police, I know Ottawa police have been very, very supportive of what's been going on in Ottawa. But there was a man in one of the hotels very close to our government building, which is called the Parliament Building in downtown Ottawa. I've been there many times and had a great time in Ottawa, actually. 5 minutes and you cross the bridge and you're over in Quebec, which is like going to a different country. That's a whole different show. Anyways, I guess there was a hotel right beside, and there was a police officer unloading things that were saying explosives. Looks like you couldn't see what was in there, but he kept asking the police officer while he was filming it, "What have you got there?" And the guy kept saying, "I don't know. It's none of your business. I don't know." And at first I thought, well, where's this coming from? Like, this could have been anywhere. Well, by the time he backed up and you saw, it was from London, Ontario, which Southern Ontario is quite congested with a lot of, there's Toronto, then there's smaller cities like Hamilton and London, Ontario, and Guelph, and then there's little communities in between. Excuse me. So I'm not sure why the police were there from London, but they were. So I don't know what's going on with that. I woke up too, and I've heard this from other people as well. Can I verify it? No. So don't take this as gospel. I have not spoken to somebody that I may possibly know. I know we know people in different fields, right? But there's nobody I have talked to in the RCMP to confirm this. But as I understand it, there was a call out to all RCMP officers across Canada that are able to make their way to Ottawa. They were being called there. Now, for those of you who may not know what the RCMP is, it's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They are pretty well almost a provincial police force for most provinces, except in Ontario, I know for a fact. We have provincial police as well, called the OPP. The only thing I could liken them to are probably like the FBI in the US, different facets of, say, Scotland Yard and what have you. They're pretty well into a lot of different things. So we'll have to see what plays out with that. But right now, things have been pretty peaceful. Now, I did get a video on this, like I said, from somebody claiming that they had information on this. Now, they seem like a reliable source. They're an activist, and we'll just have to see what happens. But this isn't so people understand, because, for every 100 messages when they're live, you see people that just write horrible things and believe the narrative that's out there, that, this is all against the jabs that are out there. That's not what this is. The people that are doing this, that are in charge of this, 90% of them, it sounds like, are jabbed so that they can support their families and feed them, because they cross back and forth to the US. They're doing this for all of Canada because we've been so divided. We haven't had a voice. Somebody had to do this. A lot of people don't know where their food comes from. They don't know that everything they have in their home, the roof over their head, the bed they sleep in, the clothing they wear, that has been brought to you by a trucker pretty well. It has. Even if it's offloaded in a port somewhere, it's flown in, it's usually transported by a truck. So we couldn't have had a more powerful voice. Unite Canada, and we're talking all races, all religions, all communities. That it's not so much anymore, but quite a few years ago there was quite a bit of friction amongst we call them the Quebecois. Being in Quebec, they wanted to separate. There's been some tension with Alberta, which is out west. They were talking about separating for a while. Everybody was pulling together and has pulled together. Everybody has put their differences aside. Now, I'm sure you have heard about our crime minister. I made this shirt special for this evening because this is one of his posts or one of his things that he said against us Canadians out there. I got to read it upside down. And what I put on here was, a proud member of a small fringe minority with unacceptable views, because that is what our Prime Minister described this movement as. They turned off the traffic cams wherever this convoy was going, so people couldn't see what was happening. It has barely been touched by our news. All of our news in Canada, unless you're independent, say like I mentioned, Rebel News, we've got some great podcasters and news reporters out there that are independent. Dan Dix is another one, really good one. He's received a lot of flack, but he has gone all the way to Davos over in Switzerland to report on what's going on with the Economic Forum, you name it. So there's quite a few out there like that. I think he's called Raging Dissident. If you haven't checked him out yet, you need to. If you want a good laugh, he's Canadian and he doesn't mince words, but I'll tell you, he's absolutely hilarious. He's not making any jokes about it, but he infuses humor with what he has to say. So if you get a chance, check him out. He's pretty good too. So, like I said, it's a beautiful thing, but what's happening is I can't eat because I'm on my podcast. Thank you.
I was going to say,
the
delicious recipe.
Well, thank you, but I'm live.
Something.
I've already talked about the delicious recipe. I'm on my show. My guest wasn't able to, I guess, pop in just yet. I don't know if you got the link. Yes, this is Dell, who we were talking about. Thank you for the food, but I can't talk and eat at the same time.
Okay, yeah.
I guess Dell's decided he's joining our podcast here.
I'm not joining, but okay. I just came up.
You just came up. Thank you for the food. I'll eat it after I'm done. I'm talking in case Kevin gets the link, but sorry guys, now I lost my train of thought here.
I thought it would be nice there to join in special effects there for Joe Montaldo.
Yes, I've already talked to Joe. I've talked to Joe in between before. We don't usually get to chat, Joe and I, anymore. I always used to have an hour between my show at the old time when he used to produce us, but we do our producing on our own now. Sorry, guys, wasn't expecting that one, but it's not like you guys don't know who the Dell is.
7 p.m.
Pardon? 7 I've already told them, Dell.
Love you, babe.
Love you, too. Sorry, guys. Geez, I wonder who's the ham in our house. Like, how many times have you guys that follow my show seen the Dell pop on my show? You don't see me pop on his show. He is definitely the ham in our house, I will tell you that. So long story short, I know what I was talking about. There's been a lot of inspiration around the world. When I was talking to the Australian group, and I want to give them a shout out, it's a private messenger group I'm in. They asked what was going on in Canada, like I said. And the other thing that happened with this, we had over 660,000 members in a Facebook group about this. And it was taken down, I believe, just before they got to Ottawa. So it's been restarted. And when I went on the page, right there in front and center in Canberra, Australia, they are starting a convoy. I'm hearing in all other parts of the world, different countries are now gathering, following suit, standing up, and doing the same thing with their truckers. Now I'm gonna tell a little tale about the Dell. He wasn't that supportive of this in the beginning, and not because he was being an idiot. The reason why, and I can hear what he's saying, he works for a local business here in the food industry, and he said this is going to hurt all these small businesses and even medium-sized businesses that have already suffered enough. Why couldn't this just be that the trucks that delivered, say, to the large big box stores be doing this? And I kept saying to him, I think you're missing the idea. And I think as he started to fall, like he's been watching the story nonstop, and he's definitely in favor. And of course, I did have to throw in there something needed to be done. And if you have a better idea, rather than sitting at home on a couch watching and saying, I don't agree, then you do something and you get all of Canada to follow you. Because we pretty well have had, I would say, a good 80% that has jumped on board with this and is 100% behind it. You can have your phone. My whole family's in here this evening now. Hang on, my friend. There you are. Thank you. Everybody's in here tonight. You get to see my whole family tonight, guys. Sorry about that. That happens with live radio. Yeah, so everybody's jumping on board. The other thing that I saw, if you get a chance to look things up, and I encourage you always, regardless of what I say on here or what even my guests say, if something resonates with you or you wonder more about it, or even if you don't believe it's true, take a look for yourself. Do your own research. That's part of what this is, getting people to think, do their own thinking, and start trying to figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what resonates with you, what doesn't. So basically, once Dell started looking at this after I had said to him, then you do something. You get most of the country to follow you and do what this is. This is the biggest protest that has ever happened in the world in the history of the world. And now that he's looked, and he's really, really looked at this, and the amount of support that we are getting from, like I said, every walk of life, every religion, every ethnic group, even groups that notoriously maybe had a little bit of friction, everybody is together on this. And that's the beauty in it. And you know what it is? We kept seeing from country, from city to city they went. It's exactly what we know of what Canadians are. We love to, people come for a visit or whatever. You entertain, you feed, you take care of people, you band together as a community, you support one another. And we really haven't been seeing that with what's been going on for the past 2 years. I'm still trying to figure this out because that's where I was going with this. There was a really good interview somebody sent me, and it had been edited. And when I started watching it, I was going, this isn't what they described this as. And what it is, Justin Trudeau has a half brother and sister that I didn't even know about. And his name is Kyle Kemper. And it said, Kyle Kemper, brother of Justin Trudeau, speaks out against him. And he was very complimentary about his brother and how much he had admired him as his older brother. They had the same mother. And I thought, this doesn't sound like he's got anything negative to say. But I actually, somebody sent me the full interview. It is well worth watching, especially the last few minutes, because the interview was an excellent interview. It was a female independent newscaster. I forget what her name is. And she said, I'm going to ask you a few questions that might be a little bit personal, but if they are personal or too personal, please let me know. And the last question she asked him, Kyle, is she said, if you could talk to your brother right now, what would you say to him? And he said, I had a funny feeling you were going to ask me that. And he said, you have three options. One is you step down now. And he started talking about the analogy of boiling the frog, which the Dell likes to use. And he had talked about earlier how he feels he's sort of a pawn, his brother, in all of this big thing. And he said, step down now because you're almost at the point of the pot boiling with the frog being boiled. And then he said, the second option that's even better is you stand up and you speak the truth and you tell exactly what's going on and then you step down. He said, or the third option is you continue doing what you're doing. Yeah, right, Dave, exactly. It was an excellent interview with Kyle. And the third option basically was you continue what you're doing and basically God help you. So I can't see him stepping down. Another good point of view somebody brought up to me, I hadn't really thought about it, is I hope that the people that are in Ottawa stand their ground because they're asking for all mandates to end. Because we are in lockdown here in Ontario, where I am. You're still having to wear masks. Quebec, next to me, is in terrible, terrible dire straits. They just had their curfew lifted that started New Year's Eve. They had to be in by 10 o'clock till 5 a.m. They also are basically in prohibition. If you're not jabbed, you're not allowed to go buy any alcohol or um, the green stuff that you can smoke, I'll say, is legal here. You're not allowed to. The province next to that, New Brunswick, they're not allowed to buy food. So unless you've got someone that can go to a grocery store for you or you can afford to have groceries delivered to you, I don't know what you do for food. And there are people like that that are on their own. And the whole point about this is, you know, and I really want to make this point, is there's a lot of people, especially I find a lot of people that have gotten a jab, that are very sanctimonious about this. Not under, it just drives me insane when I hear people say, you're selfish, you're horrific, all you do is think about yourself, you're going to kill my mother and father, you're going to kill my children. And don't you follow the science? And to me, like I said, I'm not a know-it-all nurse, and I don't have a medical degree, but I do understand how the human body works, and I've done a lot of research on this. None of this makes sense. And when I don't get into these arguments with people, but I've heard them very, very close to home, have heard them. And once you refute what they're saying with the truth, then it's almost like that old comedy routine of who's on first, because it just goes in circles and circles and circles and circles, and none of it makes any sense. But my point I've been trying to say to people, Dave's heard me say this before, is that, and again, if you guys are on Facebook and I can't see if you're on my page, I apologize. You might want to go to, I just thought of this now, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network page on Facebook. You just have to click follow, and then you'll be able to see the show, and I'll probably see your comments. But my whole point is, and I believe, well, I've been thinking about this for a long time, but it was Justin Trudeau's security detail. He was one of the snipers who protected Trudeau, and he refused to get jabbed, and he's lost his job. He worked for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and he's been speaking out. And his line that really, really struck me is, where do you draw your line in the sand? And I don't think people are seeing this. And getting back to Kevin Annett, he was talking about that most of these things were done to the First Nations people. Most of this stuff was tested on minorities. Over in the UK, there, I don't know if I'll have time to get into that, but I have seen some videos that have just, dear Lord, you look up the, I think it's the Hampshire police scandal over in the UK. You start unraveling that one. Holy cow. Anyways, what my point is, say you think people are being selfish, and I've met many, including Nadell last night, who have no clue what they're talking about, that want people that don't get jabbed locked up. And we do have internment camps here. They are built. That's not tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. They are built, and they are building more. There are those over in Australia as well. They're under a lot of stuff that we are too. And my point is, and this is something that Kevin had talked about in the interview I watched with my friend Karen Holton, was where do you draw the line? And I believe he used the excuse about over in Germany, because people often asked, how did the Holocaust start? How did this persecution against the Jewish people start? And when you start looking and unraveling what's been going on right now, and then, people that are still alive from that time period can share what the truth was. And Kevin had alluded to this, that, oh, well, that happened to those people because they were marginalized in the news. And then they moved up to the next level. And then those people were taken away, but, oh, that it's not us, it doesn't affect us, and just pretty well just turned it off, right? It doesn't affect us. They're not going to bother us. And it got to the point then when it became their turn, there was nobody left to even have a voice for them. And this is where I'm going with this is, okay, so you maybe don't have, and I'm talking global you don't have a problem with the government telling you to put, that you have to put something in in your body, or you will not be allowed to feed your families, you will not be able to go to certain, you won't be able, basically your freedoms and rights are taken away. And our prime minister has been so guilty of this. He has alluded to people that refuse to get jabbed as racist, misogynist. They're just a small fringe minority group of people, and they don't deserve to be tolerated. That interview is in French, by the way, but you can certainly see the subtitles. I speak both languages. I heard the French, the subtitles are correct. But okay, so say this continues. What happens now? Where's your line in the sand when I'm talking the global you? So what if they mandate now that you have to give a kidney? The human body only needs one kidney. You have to give a kidney. Everybody has to give a kidney. Everybody. And while we're at it, we're going to take most of your liver too, because your liver regenerates. That's truthful, unless you've got liver disease or what have you. And I know that sounds really extreme, but is it? When you start looking into other countries where this has happened, I don't know how many of you are aware of the one child law that was over in China for many, 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 many years. But guess what? It's now 25, 30 years later after they've had this law. They have an abundance of men that can't find wives because they got rid of girls. Because with the culture, it was very important if you could only have one child that you had a male heir to carry on the family name. This is what I'm trying to say, that when we look, and again, history has been changed all over the world. And when the truth eventually comes out, I think people are going, rage is not a word that is even going to cover this, let alone disbelief, shock, depression, because everything you know that you think you know that you've learned, and it's not me being a conspiracy theorist, it's a lie. I'm going to read Dave's comment, and then I want to mention something that I found out a while ago with Dr. Charles Hoff in British Columbia. He was the first doctor, that came out publicly to speak out what he was noticing. He's from South Africa. He's lived in a small community in Lytton, British Columbia. I've never been there myself. That noticed that something was wrong. His bulk of his patient load is First Nations people. They were the first people to be given these jabs. He's the one that came out, by the way, with the discovery that the D-dimer test is what needs to be ordered if you are having issues after the jab, to see if you have microclots, because everything else seems to show up negative. But if you have a positive D-dimer test, that's how you know if there's clots or not. He was responsible for that. I'm going to get to your comment, Dave. The second thing I want to add very quickly, there was a rash of fires and a bunch of properties destroyed in this small little community of Lytton right after he came out. He's lost his job. I mean, the other thing is, even if people become cognizant of this, what they're having a hard time understanding is, why would anybody do this? I'll leave it at that for a minute. I want to read Dave's comment. Great way to phrase it, Lorilei. If you don't put something in your body that we're trying to force on you, then you can't travel to other countries. You can't feed your family. You can't be employed. Yes. And so maybe the global you, or we could say a person, believes in this, believes there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with having to produce your papers to go somewhere freely. That if we only comply, then you can have your freedom back. We were always free. We were always free in these democratic countries. And now all of a sudden, because, when you think about it, and I've never really understood why the world always seems to need a leader. It doesn't matter whether it's a small group or what. We all have brains. We're all capable of critical thinking, or we were. And now, what the government is for in democratic countries is to make sure, they're for infrastructure, to make things, and when I say the needs of the people, I'm talking about, that things are fair, things are safe, things like that. Now, let's be careful about that word safe, though. It is not the job of the government to be your parent. The government works for the people and it does the bidding of the majority of the people in a democratic society. It doesn't mandate what people do. And then when you have a leader is there to unite, to uplift the people, to be truthful, but to give hope. That's why we have a leader, not someone that marginalizes and divides and labels people. Yet, I mean, we've had Bill C-10 go through here in Canada. Nothing was put in the news about this, and our Prime Minister broke every law that he could. He went around our Parliament, he went around our Senate, he wrote other laws to get this through. He didn't care. That's a dictator. So now he controls whatever we can see or can't see in Canada. And the next bill that's coming, that's almost through, he's doing the same thing again, is that the government decides what's hate speech and what is hate speech and what isn't. What you're allowed to say and what you're not. I saw a great video. It was about 5 minutes long. A woman explained it in a nutshell. The government becomes the judge and jury and decides whether. And the other thing is, it's almost like Minority Report when this goes through. So say I've got Joe Blow down the street that doesn't care for me, decides to go to the authorities and say, I think she's going to write some hate speech about me online, and I'm worried about this. Potentially, with this. I kid you not, I could go to jail for 10 years and get a fine of up to $75,000. I haven't even done it yet. It's just, it might happen. And Dave says, if people want to see how that goes, please read about World War II. Yes, Dave, I agree with you. And the same as I've seen people in certain chat rooms, or if there's a live stream I'm in, and people in Australia, people here in Canada are talking about, I mean, there are things happening over in France too. The main worst countries are Australia, Canada, and believe it or not, I've been seeing Argentina mentioned quite a bit. And the thing is, with our countries, we are headed towards communism. And then there'll be people that'll be commenting saying, you have no idea what communism is about. We are melting pot countries. We have open borders practically when it comes to people coming in here. It's crazy with immigration. And yet I'm not commenting on immigration. What I'm saying is we have a lot of people over here that were in Belarus, that were in Russia, that were in Poland, that were in Ukraine, where all these, Germany, where these people lived under communism, and they are the ones fighting the hardest because they see the signs. They remember what they left. They left so they could give their children or their family a free life, a democratic life, and they're seeing it happen here where we live. The problem is the people that are here have never experienced it before, so they have no idea what's happening unless you do your homework. And I'm not trying to spread fear and anxiety. I always believe that knowledge is empowering. Like I said, you don't have to believe me. Take a look for yourself. All I ask is that you use different search engines. Start looking this up because you guys, this isn't, and this is something else Karen said with her interview with, and I'm not trying to do a critique of Karen or with repeat their interview, but I think she made some really valid points. Karen and I work on a lot of things together. We do a lot of podcasts together. We've done each other's podcasts. We were guests together on a lot of podcasts. And where was I going with this? I got to think about this for a second. My whole point is that, I guess, so I'm going to back up a little bit, is that if we don't start standing up now, okay, and this is an experiment, I think, to see how far can we go with this. And, people that's where I was going with this. People keep asking, they think that this is just it. This is what we see. This is it. You guys have no idea. Once you lift just even an edge of that box, how huge that Pandora's box is. I alluded a little bit to what was going on in England. You have no idea. And when we don't hear about a lot of these things that happen over in other countries. But when you do and you start putting the pieces together, it used to drive me insane that, and I just didn't wake up because of what happened here over the last 2 years. I've known for a very long time. And once you start looking at this, you can't close Pandora's box. Once you start, like Dave and I have gotten to become good friends. Dave's been on my show before. He's an amazing astrologer. He's a great teacher. If you get a chance, please check him out. I know he's on Facebook, and he's, that's part of what he does with his work. He loves to teach. So if you always maybe want to learn about astrology, it's a very novel way to teach people how to do astrology. So look him up and maybe book some sessions with him so he can teach you. It's very interesting way to start looking at the concepts, and there's a lot of truth in what goes on with astrology. It's not all this woo-woo stuff. There's a lot of scientific basis, especially the way Dave does it. My whole point is when you start seeing what a moving machine this is and for how long it has existed, that this has always been planned. If you've done any truth seeking at all, you've probably heard the words, you'll own nothing in 2030, and you'll be happy about it. Meat will just be an occasional treat. Basically, you won't be eating meat anymore. And it was a commercial that was on, if I'm not mistaken, it was the United Nations. One of the United Nations, I believe, channels, or like one of their websites. And once people started catching on to what was going on here, they lifted that commercial. A little digging, you can probably still find it. But when you start looking into the saying, follow the money, and like I said, it drove me insane because I kept saying, why do people keep saying this? Like, why do they keep saying this? What do you mean, follow the money? What it means is when you start looking at, because money makes this world go round, it's the currency we use, it's how we do the things we do, it's how companies run, and so on and so forth. It's also one of the biggest corruptors in the world. When you start looking at it and you start following some of these names that you see keep coming up, and you start digging and you start seeing who's funding this, and then you start following, if you will, the puzzle that goes with it, the end of every one of those ropes, it's always, always, always the same names. Always. The other thing is, when you look at the players that are involved with this, excuse me, and you follow the money, these aren't people that are elected. A lot of these names you probably never heard before. And then when you really start digging deeper and you see how utterly evil and corrupt and why they are doing what they are doing, most people can't grasp it. And you know what? I don't fault you because it is just unbelievable the things that you hear and you see. And there's far too much evidence out there that this is conspiracy theory. Let's even break that word conspiracy theory down. I mean, goodness, do you know where that word came from? After the JFK assassination, CIA put it out there for people that were digging too deep to find out what the truth was. And so they came out in the media with the name conspiracy theory, and they've used it well. That's why I don't like that word. I prefer truth seeking. Don't get me wrong, there's some crazy stuff I have heard even. I'm going, I think that one kind of sits way beyond even my proverbial back shelf I've talked about on this show before. That, there's certain things that I'm not sure about that I'll stick up, but then I call it my proverbial back shelf because I do believe that truth always prevails. It always does. The same thing as you can have a room that is pitch black and you light one little iota of light. What does it do to that room? Depending how big it is. But what I'm saying is light always overcomes the dark. That's why I think it's so important to talk about these things and to get people thinking, if anything. Like I said, you don't have to believe me. There's some great videos if you are just waking up and you're trying to understand what's going on, or like, because this is a big question I find with people that newly awaken or just starting to understand this. Well, why is this happening? Why would they do this? This is why I'm having such a hard time. Why would they do this? There's two great videos out there I share with people. They're long, but they're in short segments. One is called The Fall of the CAB as in Bob, AL. And the second part, which was only supposed to be 17 little bits long, they're about 9 to 30 minutes long, depending on what has to be said each little section. They're on episode 20 right now with no plans to end. And there's some things that people may find boring, especially in the sequel, because they get into the history of all this. And these two women, they're from the Netherlands, they have worked every waking second of the day on this. You can see the work that they've done. And they tell you throughout both videos, you don't have to believe us. All we ask is if you're not sure or you're curious, look it up for yourself. And the stuff they have unearthed has just blown my mind. Blown my mind. Another good friend of mine that was on this show quite a bit, I got to get a hold of him and talk to him in forever, is Dan Willis. Now, he worked with Marcel Vogel. Those of you that are crystal lovers like myself will have heard of Vogel Crystals. So I think he has a website. I think it's vogel.org or marcelvogel.org. And then he has another website. I want to say, if you look up Dan Willis, even on Facebook, he's got all his websites up there. He has gone back to 1900, and I wish to God, it's probably I would need a year, but 8 to 12 hours a day to go through there. No, don't get me wrong. You can do a search if you're looking up for things or whatever. But the amount of information, research, and detail this gentleman has put in there to correct everywhere in history where it has been changed. He will give you the sources. He will give you how he got the information. He provides video. He'll provide pictures and so on and so forth. And he connects all the dots. And it will blow your mind when you find out how much in history has actually been changed. It will blow your mind. Dave wrote, thanks, Lorilei. Yes, feel free to message me, everyone, if you'd like to learn about astrology and your birth chart. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Because he's awesome. I'm going to have him back on my show again. I definitely will. And I don't mind my show being, I just feel bad for any of you that might have thought that maybe I wasn't on tonight. And I haven't done a show in a long time, just by myself, just talking. And if there's any of you out there, like I said, and you've got some questions or comments like Dave, like I said, and you're just joining, feel free to like the UPRN or UFO Paranormal Radio page on Facebook. You can, as soon as you join that, you can see the streaming there. You can see it on my Facebook profile too, but I don't always see the comments over there. Now, normally we are on our main YouTube channel. We have one main YouTube channel and two backup channels. One's called UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. I always forget the last one. I'm so sorry. I think it's United Radio. I want to say International United Radio, something like that. You can find it. But our main channel, and I'm going to remind you again, we have just been remonetized finally. Our old channel always was, and through no fault of our own, we got strikes and lost that channel. So we are now having members like most bigger YouTube channels do. I'm going to remind you just in case you're tuning in. Please feel free to check that out. It's way less than a cup of coffee a day. There's a lot of exclusive content. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dave. International Public Radio on YouTube. That's our third channel. I knew somebody would put it in there for me. I always forget the third name of it. It took me forever to remember UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. But our main channel I'm talking about in we are called United Public Radio Network, but it's under UFO Paranormal Radio on YouTube. We have memberships, way less than a cup of coffee a day. You will get exclusive content. We have so many between live hosts as well as syndicated hosts that will be providing syndicated content. Basically, I don't know if syndicated is the right word, but it's content that we won't necessarily be able to put on the regular YouTube channel. And tonight's show with Kevin, that's why I'm not on the main channel. If he was on, I knew we were going to be talking about a lot of sensitive topics. That would be the type of thing I will put up behind there so people can access it. I have some great interviews that they either have to remain hidden. So unless you know me, you get the link, or I'll have to share the link with people. So this way, if you're a member, you can go there, you can find it. And all of us are going to be putting up content like that as well as extra things. We had a great staff meeting this weekend on Sunday and found out so if you don't normally tune in to UPRN on Sundays, because usually we just have some great archives that play, we have found out as a host that we can do broadcasting that day if we want. So you may find some really interesting live shows with different content from some of your favorite hosts that don't normally talk about these topics, say on their show. I'm thinking of Jenny from Chasing Prophecy. She's got some interest, I believe she was mentioning about keto and something to do with that. So I know she's talking about possibly doing some extra shows there. I have had one of my main loves is resin work. I've had a lot of people coming to me asking me to show them how to do it. Who knows? I might just stream while I'm doing some resin, show you guys a few things, talk a little bit more about some of these topics, or even been looking at maybe talking a little bit about true crime. That's quite popular. So, like I said, keep an eye out for Sundays on our network, because there's a lot of people that are going to be popping up with surprise content too. So it's well worth it. Be sure to tell your friends about it too. And just remember, now that we're monetized, you guys can also send super chats, which also all helps support the network. It doesn't go into our pockets. It goes to help support because this is all broadcast out of where Joe's beautiful home. He goes out to, like I said, we go out to almost 200 countries around the world, or I believe just over, and anywhere where there's talk radio, you name it, or podcasts, we are on there. So we are on some of the bigger things like SoundCloud, Podbean, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker. But I remember, I think I was a guest on a podcast over in Scotland with it was a little network that's not censored, so you could talk about whatever you wanted. And somebody had asked me, this was quite a few months ago, for a link to the show. So I did a search for it, and I just about fell over when I realized when I found it in a small, tiny little app that I don't even know how I found the app. It came up in my search. All of our radio broadcasts are covered on this. So anywhere you look, you're going to find our archive. So great. It's a great thing that way. Like I said, we've got some great hosts over the years, great guests. And I said, there's something for everybody on this network. So long story short, I am so glad that the world is coming together. I again, not that I'm trying to push Karen Holton, but I said we work quite a bit. And I had the other person that was with us, she's gone by a professional name now, October. Hallam is her name. And Karen did a two-part series that we filmed. That was the podcast I forgot about. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that it took 3 minutes and I was all ready. And what we did for the first episode last week was Karen got us all as being intuitives and extremely clairaudient with spirit or being able to hear. And no, we don't hear voices. We shared what we were picking up intuitively, what was happening during 2021. We also got into what we feel is coming in 2022. And then we did end it on a really positive note because some of the stuff that we shared, I don't know if people would believe would be that positive, but what we felt was that it was important to be truthful, but also that, again, knowledge is empowering because you have a choice, you have warning, you have time. And if it doesn't happen, you've got nothing to lose. You're prepared anyways. But what we were all talking about and why we decided to do the show is I'm finding, depending on what group you belong to, if you are awake there, but what the main gist of it seems to be is everybody is waiting for some knight in shining armor to come and save them, to swoop in. They're going to save the day. They're going to fix it. If it's a UFO community, they think it's, the Pleiadians and the Galactic Federation. And I know I sound crazy. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just sharing what I've been told. There's a certain movement that really truly believes that a certain Mr. T that was past president in the US is coming back. There are other people, like I said, it goes on and on depending on who you belong, what group you belong to, of those that believe they're awake. And we were getting different messages from spirit, but funnily enough, especially while we filmed this, we started talking about what we were getting privately amongst ourselves individually. And what we were finding was none of us were getting that somebody was coming in to save us. That what this is all about is about humanity uniting as one, putting your differences aside, putting any problems you've had, kind of a little bit like what we've been seeing in Canada here, putting it all aside, uniting together as the human race and saying no more, but also recognizing how incredibly amazing we are as human beings. All the things they have told us we're not capable of, we are capable of, and so, so, so much more that we've never been led to believe. Dave said, you don't get out of the cycle of time until you take yourself out. Yes, I agree. Yeah, you're right about that, Dave. And Dave's talked quite a bit about us going into the age of Aquarius and what goes with that. Um, Now, I don't poo-poo anybody that believes this, but I have quite a few friends within the intuitive community that truly, truly believe in Mercury retrograde, which is supposed to be especially affecting many things, but a lot of electronics and what have you. Now, there's the only reason why I don't focus on this. It's not necessarily I don't believe in it, but I do believe in the power of the mind. I do believe that our words, our thoughts, and our emotions are some of the most powerful sources of energy out there. One of the laws of the universe, right? Or physics even, is energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can be transferred from one place to another. So everything on this planet is made up of energy if we're going back to science, right? So to me, and I actually had a friend talk to me about predictive programming. He said it very just like a few words, and I got it right away. I don't know if you guys look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. So, if everything is energy and our thoughts and our words and our emotions, think about that. Think about anger, how powerful that is. They've been starting to measure these type of things, or with quantum physics and all that. They start looking at that, and distance doesn't make a difference. I do healing work. I've done it halfway across the globe and it still works. There's no difference. We are powerful with our minds. We've just been led to believe that we're not, and we are. And again, you can research this. Things we've been told that are never possible that people can do. Don't get me wrong, everybody has different gifts. But, excuse me, my whole point is, and I was getting to this, David, probably going to have to remind me what I was talking about. Let's see, you said the power in the human body can be stronger than astrology. Thank you. Now I know where I'm going with this. So my thoughts are with Mercury retrograde. I'm going to get back to that comment, Dave. Thank you for the way you said. Am I manifesting this? We live in a place of manifestation. I believe this earth is that type of place that once we understand the law of attraction and the law of manifestation, that we can pretty well make happen or create whatever we want. So, and it kind of goes back to my friend who mentioned this to me about predictive programming. For those of you that aren't sure what predictive programming is, it's basically same movies like Songbird that were out there, and it doesn't quite call what's going on with the pandemic in that movie, but there's so many similarities to what's really going on in real life. It's almost, and as I understand it, we'll call it the dark side that are behind this, or Mr. Global. They always tell you, whether it's in a Simpsons episode or a movie or a music video or whatever, it's up to us to figure out where they tell you, but they tell you. Again, I've been given various reasons for this, whether it's because they believe it cancels out their karma. I don't know what it is, why they do it, but they do. They always tell you. And so what my friend had said, and it kind of goes along with this, is with Mercury retrograde. Do all these things go wrong because I'm expecting them to go wrong? Maybe I'm subconsciously or possibly focusing on it so I help make it happen. And this friend of mine had actually said to me, I just had a thought. He goes, with predictive programming, he goes, what if it's not actually telling us what they're going to do, but it's just putting the idea out there? And again, we'll take the movie The Matrix, or we'll take the movie Songbird, because that was recent. A lot of people have seen that. He said, so they put the idea out there, and understanding the law of attraction, that people, whether you come from a fear-based perspective or whatever it is, but there's a collective focusing on this idea, which happens to help it manifest or come to fruition. And I've had my good friend Augie Nost on here quite a bit. He talks about the mastermind. When you have more than one mind focused on something, you multiply the power of those minds. So if he says if you have a room of 10 people and you multiply the power of those 10 minds, you actually create the power of 100 minds. So again, it sounds a little bit complicated. It sounds a little bit woo-woo, if you will. Some people have asked me what woo-woo is. It's sort of a lot of these kind of odd or stranger, if you will, concepts that are very high vibe, sort of hippy dippy kind of, most people don't believe it. It's not mainstream belief, but when you start to really look into it, or you start to really focus on it, or do a bit of research, that you get some of it, but maybe not quite of it. But there are a lot of people that kind of live like that, right? Nothing wrong with it, but sometimes it's a little hard to relate to all the time in real life. That's just my own opinion. Now, anyways, I'm going to go back to Dave's comment here. Yes, the power in the human body, you said, are stronger. Yeah, okay, about astrology. Okay, I'm going to read this again. Yes, the power in the human body can be stronger than astrology, and it should be, but we have to increase the vibration by a lot. I'm going to get to your next comment, but I want to comment on that too, Dave. With vibration, I kept hearing this, especially when we lived in our extremely haunted house. You need to raise your vibration. You need to raise your vibration. I kept thinking, what the hell is that? And again, you get back to the energy concept, right? And if everything is made of energy, and they've proven that as the vibration rises, or if you will, starts to become lighter, and they've actually measured how much energy is associated, say, with depression, sadness, grief, guilt, anger. Hello, Miss Sophie. Um, or anger is not necessarily a bad thing because there's movement with it. And then when you start to move up higher to say, you know, I don't know, you're happy but not ecstatic, and then you're getting into joy, then you're getting into jubilance, and so on and so forth. That's higher up vibrationally, energetically. So that's what they're talking about, raising your vibration. So I teach about this quite a bit. A lot of people are saying, I'm really depressed. I have no energy. I'm just feeling like no hope or whatever it is. That's really low vibration. And when you start to raise your vibration, you can make it happen. Make it by going outside. Um, if you can, where you live, take off your shoes and socks, walk on the earth. Um, Watching a movie. Every one of us has a go to movie that, every time you watch it, you just can't stop laughing. So, laughing, having friends over, good friends, and you're having a good time together, opening the windows, bringing in some of nature inside, like fresh flowers or what have you. These all help raise your vibration. And again, sounds really kind of hippy dippy new age, if you will, or woo woo as I call it. But when you look into it, it isn't. Science is starting to prove a lot of these things, and it helps boost the immune system. It can keep you healthier, and so on and so forth. Now, Dave says every retrograde can go both ways. It can assist you, and it can also make things more challenging. It does depend on the individual. Yes, I agree. And I have to agree with you, Dave, because the bulk of the people that I have met, and you see it all the time, people start posting these warnings, oh God, Mercury retrograde is coming in a couple days. And then, you know, most of the bulk of the people I have talked to do not focus on Mercury retrograde if they believe in it um, in a positive way. And I love what you said there because you're right, it can go both ways. But then again, I've had this conversation too where out of something, let's put it this way. If people are super happy, like say you've been single for a long time, you meet the love of your life, you're in the honeymoon phase, like and the birds are singing. It's like watching like a Disney movie, Cinderella or something when she's met her Prince Charming, right? Everything's wonderful and amazing. How many of us are ready to make major changes in your life when you're in that kind of phase in your life? Nobody. You want it to go on forever. We all do, right? It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's like, why can't life always be like this? So I find that the impetus for biggest change within human beings, and it's a really messed up way if you think about it, but it's when somebody goes through something really awful, like something really terrible happens in their life, and it's how every single human being has experienced this one way or another, some point or time in life. And you have a choice then. You have a choice that you can stay in the lower energy, if you will, and, you know, maybe revenge if someone's done something to you or whatever it may be. Or, and I'm going to give a horrible example. Um, the gentleman that ran America's Most Wanted, his poor little boy Adam was kidnapped when his wife was out shopping with their son, and he was brutally murdered. It was never solved. I can't even imagine what that would be like as a parent. So he had a choice to make, right? Could he have been stuck in this hatred and revenge mode for most of his life? Probably. There may have been people that have, and like I said, there's no judgment here. Just trying to demonstrate something. So when you take him, and there's many people that have done this, they get of the mindset that I don't ever want somebody to ever go through this again. For him, his son's unsolved murder, catching the bad guys, getting them off the street so they're not doing things like this to little ones or anybody. So what did he do? He created a show. Heck, they even caught one of America's Most Wanted where I live here many, many years ago when I was single. What I'm saying is he basically changed the world through going through something so horrific in his life. Or, parents that have lost, say, a child to, say, cancer or some other childhood disease, whatever it may be, they have a choice. And rightfully so. Anybody, you can go either way. Like you could live in this horrific, horrific, horrific prison of depths of despair and depression and what have you. And again, I don't think it's anybody's job to judge what somebody else is going through, unless you've walked a mile in their shoes, and probably I would say much more than a mile. But my point is, look at the amazing things that have happened, the things that have been, you know, developed because of the horrible things people have gone through. Instead of just thinking of themselves, they use the memory of, say, their loved one that they lost, and they make a change for humanity in a beautiful, positive way because of what happened. That's where I was going with this whole thing. Because Dave says, right, never let astrology control your life. Act from the heart and you'll get to where you need to be. Dave, I love that. That is beautiful. That is really beautiful. And you are so right. That's what I think it's all about, guys. Part of this is learning that it's not about service to self. It's about service to others. And people kind of ask about the meaning of life. With that being said, though, there are many, many, many people that are very good at giving. They're not very good at receiving. I think it's also about balance. I think everything has to be in balance on this planet. I think that's kind of why we have a duality system, if you will, of hot and cold, light and dark, good and bad, and so on and so forth. I think it's all about balance. So it makes a lot of sense, right? So what I'm saying with this is, yes, it's about service to others, meaning it's not about focusing on, say, material things or what have you. But, and I use this analogy because I think it's important. Flying as a small kid or whatever, 11, 12 years old, and you saw the flight attendant up at the front, and she's saying, in the event that the oxygen mask should basically fall down or whatever, however you want to say that she said it. Please ascertain that you put your own oxygen mask on before attempting to assist, say, somebody sitting with you, whether it's a child, elderly person, whomever that might require assistance. When I was younger, I always used to think that was so horrific. I was like, God, no, no, I'd be helping the people around me. And then it hit me one day. No, you need to put your own oxygen mask on, because if you don't, what good are you going to be to anybody else if you can't breathe? So that's what I'm saying about this. And the other thing is, there's a lot of people I know, even in my field, that we know about the law of attraction. We're trying to understand how it works. And we're really good, not me. When I say we, I'm talking about the global we, about, giving and, trying to think, like you said, Dave, like acting from the heart and coming from a place of love. But what we forget is to show the universe, to show whatever your belief system is, that you're also good about receiving. It's that balance, right? So you can't, as I always say, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I've been finding I've been running into a lot of fellow light workers. And this happens. That's why we have our communities and our families around us. And when I say families, my favorite show, I say this often with Supernatural, saying is family doesn't always end in blood. Sometimes we choose our own family. And it doesn't have to be blood. But I'm saying we have the people around us that we know have our backs, that love us, that support us, and we all go through tough times. That's why you have people around you, that you can lean on if you have to. Don't be afraid to ask for help either. But my whole point is, there's a lot of people going through such a difficult time right now. And I don't know. I think that that's why it's important to have people around you that, like I said, have your back, love you. That when because I'm finding a lot of people are forgetting about many of the things that they would normally do to help keep themselves in balance and, not fall into you know, basically I've been hearing from people, they feel like they're swimming through mud. They have never, ever, ever felt this level of exhaustion before. It's almost like it's too much to even try and walk. And a lot of that is, I think, because, we've got so many people else around us that are really feeling very similar or worse. And I'm finding this, like I said, mostly in the light worker community. For those of you that are light workers, that's why I'm talking about this, to remember, especially now, and this came from Spirit, and this was on Friday, was that a lot of people do remember to do grounding. That's why I said take your shoes and socks off for those that may not know what grounding is. Also, I'll remind you, not trying to promote my YouTube channel, but I share this with many people. I have a video on there called Grounding and Gritting, and it takes longer to explain it than it does to do. But it also helps you get rid of some of these feelings that just don't feel good, like the depression or the exhaustion or anxiety or sadness or depression. You don't have to be a light worker either to use this technique. It works for anybody. There was a new documentary out there a few years ago called Earthingly. It was this brand new, incredible new thing that had been discovered. Earthing has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and all it involves is taking your shoes and socks off, and if you can, getting your feet into the soil and spending time with your body, connecting with the soil, because we're meant to interact with our planet. It's so crazy. I know I sound like I'm getting really woo woo here. So we're not quite out of time, but I poor Kevin, and I feel so bad. You guys, for you guys too. I think he's not getting my emails. I don't know why, because I specifically, the last one, because it's not like him not to get back to me. I specifically, instead of putting reply or forward, I crafted a new email, put his email right in there, and I know he didn't get it. I didn't hear anything back. So, because he's not unreliable. So, for whatever reasons going on with the email, we will straighten that out. And I don't know if I have somebody booked next week. I haven't looked into February's calendar. I'll have to take a look, but we're going to be having some great guests coming for you. I'm working on trying to get some other great guests coming too. I want to tell you guys too, if there's anything you guys ever want to talk about or you want to see. I had somebody send me a request today asking me, demanding that the truckers that were in the press conference, that I needed to get them on my show. So I had to very kindly explain that of course, I would love to have them on, but they had even said in the press conference they've had over 1,000 requests to be on news stations, on podcasts, on interviews from all over the world. So, like I said, you can ask, but doesn't mean they're going to have the time right now with everything else they're doing. But eventually, we'll get a chance to talk to them, I'm sure. Other thing I want to remind people about before we go is we have February 14th coming up for those of you around the world that celebrate. I've never celebrated it myself, which we call Valentine's Day. And this is the reason why. Because to me, I don't think we should just have one day where we tell people how much we love them and how much they mean to us. Tomorrow's never guaranteed. I'm not trying to be morbid or anything, but it's not. And I always believe, especially with having worked in palliative care, that we never know when's the last time we'll see somebody. And it's true. So the people that I love, I always tell them I love them. There's phone conversation, voice messaging back and forth. I let them know I love them or how much they mean to me. And I don't expect anything in return. I just know from working around this very much with seeing people die or people being terminal, the regrets people have had, the guilt people have had, that they didn't get to say goodbye or they had an argument and then the person was very tragically lost their life. They never ever got to have that last conversation. And it's a really heavy feeling to live with. So I always try to tell people that really mean a lot to me how much they mean to me. I'll always remember I'm not perfect. So that's why I don't celebrate Valentine's Day. But my point is, I think there's so much pressure on people out there that are by themselves for whatever reason. You've chosen to be that way. Maybe you haven't met the person that's right for you just yet, whatever that may be. So I got invited Friday night to a Zoom meeting with a bunch of people I've never met, all intuitives from North America. They're all North America. They are from North America, from New York. And my friend that had invited me at the last minute wasn't going to go. or she didn't go. She wasn't feeling well, and I wasn't going to go. And I thought, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. And get a chance to meet new people and what have you. And I had a great time, by the way. Learned a lot. But my whole point of mentioning it was there was a lot of, we actually were doing readings for each other as psychics. There's a lot of romance questions. And somebody brought up something so beautiful that I want to leave you with. And the one person said, I don't have anybody significant in my life. So I have decided that February 14th is Self-Love Day. I'm going to love myself. I don't have somebody else significant in my life. So all the things maybe I would have done for somebody for Valentine's Day, I'm going to do that for myself. And what a great idea, because that's sometimes the hardest thing to do is love ourselves. So whether you decide to celebrate it as Palentine's Day with your best friends, Galentine's Day, hanging out with the girls, or however you want to call it, or Self-Love Day, or even if you celebrate Valentine's Day, mark it as a special occasion. Celebrate it about love, but like just remember that every day doesn't have to. I mean, or you don't have to have one day out of a year to let people know how much you love them, right? Let them know every day. Believe me, it'll never serve you wrong. I'm so glad you guys hung out here with me tonight. We talked about a variety of topics as we always do. I wanted to let you guys know too, if you guys ever want to have a Q&A about the paranormal, got some questions, maybe you're wondering, maybe you've got some activity at your house or you think you might and you're not sure, what is it? How will I know if it's a real activity? What do I do about it? How do I get rid of it? Anything like that. Let me know. I like having these kind of chats. If you, I can see your questions. I'm happy to answer them. You can reach out to me before a show like this and message me. I'm on facebook.com/the Angel Rock. You can email me at theangelrock1508 at gmail.com. And if you got some show ideas, maybe you want me to talk about something else. Maybe you want me to, do some research into something and do a show on it. Let me know. I love to hear about those things. I also have, like I said, when you go to facebook.com/the Angel Rock, if you ever want to book a psychic mediumship session with me, or I have healing sessions that I do many different things with that, Akashic Records. I also have two groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, and then the Angel Rocker Tribe for all things esoteric, a lot of things we talked about tonight. I also, pretty well most of the day and night, I'm connecting with people all over the world. A lot of people send me great information. So I'm usually doing a lot of research. And so if you've got any information you want to share, feel free to reach out to me, send it to me. More the merrier, because I share it with a whole group of people too. And that's how we find out what's going on in the world. Thanks for hanging with me, Dave. You said great show ideas. Night, Lorilei. Night, everybody. I apologize if I didn't see you guys over on Facebook, but thank you for hanging with me tonight. Remember, the show's moved ahead an hour now permanently. I hope you'll still hang with me. I love having you guys here. I call you my Angel Rocker Tribe or family, and I love your support, and I deeply, deeply appreciate it. And don't forget, please, to check out our YouTube channel. United Public Radio Network, but the best way to find is UFO Paranormal Radio. We've just become remonetized, so we're starting our memberships back up again, and believe me, be one of the best gifts you give yourself. It's really affordable, get some great content you're not going to see in other places, and with that, I send you all so much love and light. Hang in here, because I believe Dave Scott is coming up very soon, another Canadian. And he's got a great program. So be sure to check it out. And we will see you next Monday, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love you all, guys. Have a good one.